Common Bengals W, better late than never. Sorry for the delay on the stream, you guys. We are here, Common Bengals W. Sean, Ross, Sapp. I meant to go live with this like a week or two ago. Whenever Hard Knocks was announced, I meant to go live, but day job's been a little bit busy, my friends, and it's just going to get busier. So here we are, ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals 2024 season. And since I have last talked to you guys, which I can't even remember when it was, probably around the time of the draft. I'm trying to look it up right now, but Hard Knocks got announced, and man, that's going to be a lot of fun. Hard Knocks got announced, the Ted Karras extension, the T. Higgins tender signing, lots of stuff that has been going on with the Cincinnati Bengals. So we're here to talk about it. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. Drop a chat, whether you be on Twitter, on X, whatever the hell you call it, or on our YouTube at Common Bengals W. We would greatly appreciate that. But let's go ahead and get into this. I want to know what you guys think of these moves and just NFL moves in general. But if you don't mind, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, all that good stuff. I don't do super chats or humper chats over here like on the Fightful channel, just here to talk about Cincinnati Bengals and the like. But man, T. Higgins did sign his franchise tender. And yeah, as I look, the last time I was here was way too late draft analysis in May. So it's been almost 2 months, and even that was a 2-week-old stream. So we're getting right back into it. We're getting back into the NFL feel of things and seeing where things go. But we knew T. Higgins was going to sign his tender. It wasn't going to be a situation where T. Higgins didn't do that, especially when he wants to get paid and earn a long-term contract, whether it be from the Bengals or somebody else. Looks far more likely that it will be from somebody else. However, it was like a situation where I'm glad he did it when he did it. He proved his point. He sort of had to do it. He wants to get that long-term pay. Now, granted, if you're on a franchise tag and you have a lot of confidence in yourself, you're not going to feel that bad about getting paid way more than even probably market value at this point. But he's going to be a guy that somebody pays an awful lot of money to next year, because even though he is the Bengals' number 2 receiver, he is going to be somebody's number 1, and they're going to pay him like a number 1 and take that gamble. And I think it's going to be an effective gamble for them. I have no concerns whatsoever that T. Higgins can fill that role. Now, listen, you can point to numbers and say, oh yeah, but compared to whoever, he doesn't do this. It's impossible, man. It's impossible to really put that there and say, oh, you know what? Well, he can't be a number 1 for that reason. Look at Marvin Jones, right? Marvin Jones had an incredible year in 2013 and had I think he had 10 touchdowns on 700 yards or something like that. And at the same time, you got AJ Green out there with 1,400 yards. That's where T. Higgins is right now with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is obviously the number 1 guy, clearly the guy that the Bengals want to keep long term. Well, Marvin Jones had that ankle injury. He came back. He had a very strong year in 2015, and then he left, and he became a top receiver for the Detroit Lions. He became a guy that was getting 1,000 yards a year. I think that he led this. He didn't lead. I think he had 9 touchdowns one year or something, but he was a guy that they could rely on as that fringe number 1 for quite some time, a guy that they very clearly believed in and paid him accordingly. And, I think that's what is going to happen with T. Higgins. Now, granted, Marvin Jones went to a place where they also had Golden Tate and stuff like that, but T. Higgins is going to get paid. I don't think it's going to be by the Bengals. I do think the Cincinnati Bengals are constructing their team in a way where they don't need to have 3 receivers that are at the level of Jamar Chase, a very clear number 1, probably a top 3 or 4 receiver in the league. T. Higgins, who I feel is probably a top 20 receiver in the league. And Tyler Boyd, who up until last season, I felt was as good as many number 2s. At one point, I thought he was as good as some of the lower end number 1s, but as that season went along last year, I really felt like he was more of a fringe 2-3 I think they're going to construct their team to where they don't need that, because with the effectiveness of their tight ends last year, especially with a backup quarterback like Jake Browning, I think they are going to lean more on that. You saw them take some flyers in the draft with some very high upside tight ends. They brought back Tanner Hudson. They brought back Drew Sample. They've got that. And also Mike Gesicki, who I think is going to do more slot work than he is tight end work. But him involved as well. I think that's what we're going to see more of. I think we're going to see a more explosive backfield or running backs in general with Zach Moss and Chase Brown. And I think they're going to get more of a two-headed attack there. And you're probably going to get more explosive runs that they can count on. Now, with Mixon not being there, I don't know necessarily how the passing game to running backs will work. I mean, honestly, hopefully less, because I got so tired of bubble screens all the first half of last year. But the tight end work, I think, is going to step up a significant amount with Tyler Boyd gone in general. Now, you do have the draft pick, the third rounder that they took, that is going to be very good. I don't know about immediately, but you're going to start to see throughout this season, I think, the Bengals sort of change their offensive philosophy from that, oh, okay, well, we got to rely on these three top wide receivers, and you're going to see it spread out, first off, a lot more because of the nature of Tyler Boyd being gone. But Jermaine Burton, I think, will be able to slide in and probably give you comparable. Okay, maybe not him immediately, but Gesicki and Burton, I think, are going to be able to give you comparable production as what you got out of Boyd. So as far as Boyd being gone, I'm not as concerned about that as of now. First few weeks might tell an awful lot. But T. Higgins is going to get paid. We know when he's going to show up now. Likely will be there for all of training camp and all that stuff. So glad that he got that tender done, and that drama is over for now. So the offensive end for the Cincinnati Bengals, you want Joe Burrow healthy, obviously. He's talked a little bit more about his mortality, and at this point, you do have to question the injuries. I do every year now, because we're talking about the COVID year, the ACL, the appendix, the calf, the wrist. He has had stuff all over his body hurt. His leg, his knee, his body, his arm, everything is hurt. The only thing he hasn't had is concussion issues. I got to see a healthy year. Now, last year, I was big on the Bengals bringing in Trevor Siemian, because I felt like the Bengals needed a backup at that point that had started in the league and had a little bit of experience. I think that they needed that. However, he lost out that job in training camp fair and square. And he ended up starting 3 games for the Jets, and played horribly, still won a couple of them. But, they brought a guy into camp who had started 30 games in the NFL, which I think is I think it was a good idea. And now I feel like the Bengals have an effective backup in Jake Browning, who led the league in completion percentage. He is what they need. He is what they need. Signed him for 2 years. Good with that. I'm glad that Joe Burrow is at least being honest and transparent again about his mortality and his health. He's not ignoring it. It's something that we have to pay attention to at this point. Do I hope and expect him? Do I hope he'll be healthy? Yes. Do I expect him to play every game this year? I don't at this point. And I can't at this point. Because we are looking at a situation where Joe Burrow was healthy for 5 games last year, maybe. 5 games. And the Bengals lost 4 games that Joe Burrow wasn't healthy for. Imagine if they won 1 or 2 more of those, how that would have went. We will do a podcast in the coming weeks about what the Bengals record could have been if Joe Burrow just played when he was healthy. And we'll do a sort of a schedule predictor, season predictor as well to fill in these gaps, as I'm very clearly worried about filling in gaps with the 2-month absences. But good to hear Joe Burrow at least isn't living in delusion. You gotta at least be honest with yourself about that. Connor says, after watching some piss poor baseball, the Bears Hall of Fame game can't come soon enough. I try to get into Hall of Fame game every year. Can't do it. Tim says Higgins will be a big help for the Bengals, possibly winning the North this year. Higgins is a steady receiver. He is. He's very good. And listen, Tyler Boyd's production, he didn't miss really any time since, I want to say, 2019, but his production has steadily decreased. Tyler Boyd, and that's okay. Like, he was the bridge between the AJ Green era to the Jamar Chase era to the T Higgins era. But I think what Boyd did last year, you can replace. Like, he had a 4-season low in catch percentage. He had 2 touchdowns and 660 yards, and one of the most boneheaded, passing plays that you'll ever see. Thank you for your service. We will take more athletic tight ends, Mike Gesicki and Jermaine Burton. Higgins, however, the things that Higgins did last year when on point could not be replicated. That throw, I want to say it was in the Vikings game, could not be replicated. 650 yards, 5 touchdowns, but I think he missed 6 games. Not as easy to replicate what he did. His yards per reception were at a career high. The catch percentage was low, especially because of that first game. And that's something that I definitely look at, is how often they're dropping balls. But would I consider the Bengals past the rebuilding phase and into their run to the trophy phase? I've always looked at them as in a run to the trophy phase since they were ahead of schedule and made it to the Super Bowl that year. Because I expected the Bengals for their 2021 season to break 500, and the next year they would get to the playoffs. Then maybe last year it would have been the Super Bowl run. That's what I expected, because a lot of them are, okay, you get your QB on that contract, and then it falls apart a little bit more, unless you're Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. So, here we go. Can you explain what you thought about the thought process was of getting rid of Mixon and signing someone for similar money? I guess to me it was more of a side step than a step forward. Well, Israel, I'm glad you sent this. This isn't true at all. So the Bengals were, if Joe Mixon would not have taken a pay cut last year, he would not have been on the team. So I'll give you a little bit of history of Joe Mixon. Another thank you for your service, see you down the road type of thing. He had his off the field problems, always is a good teammate. In 2022, had he not had that one game where he just exploded and had like 4 or 5 touchdowns, there was a good chance that Samaje Perine would have already been the starter for him on week 10. But what happened was, I mean, we're talking about the first 8 weeks of the season for Joe Mixon were him averaging 3.3 yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. Now, what you can say about him is he's sure-handed. He doesn't drop the ball. But 3.3 yards for a Super Bowl winning or Super Bowl team is not good. He became more of a catching back at that point. However, week 9 happened, and Joe Mixon single-handedly whipped the Carolina Panthers' ass. That saved his starting gig, I feel like. The next week, he got hurt, and he missed the following 2 weeks. So Samaje Perine didn't do anything to make you go, oh, okay, you gotta have him in the road, or him taking the snaps. So here's what happened. Mixon missed those 3 games. He came back. He averaged like 4 yards a carry over the next 4 games and had a touchdown. And yeah, he did okay in the playoffs. It was very inconsistent. He had one really good game against the Buffalo Bills, but wasn't consistent. And the Bengals were like, you got to take a pay cut to stay with us. Last year was okay. It was just okay. He got to his 1,000 yards. They really pushed that in. 9 touchdowns. It was a much better year, infinitely better year than 2022. But his cap hit was really, really big. Like, it was really big. So what the Bengals were going to do was just cut him. However, the Texans hit him up and they said, hey, we'll give you a pick for him. And then they paid him even more money. They gave him an extension to stay. The Bengals were not going to do that with Joe Mixon. In fact, they got Zach Moss for like half of what Joe Mixon was going to make. Joe Mixon's contract, let me just check right here. I'm pretty sure he was in the 8 to 10 range. Yeah, Joe Mixon right now has a 3-year, 25 mil contract. Zach Moss is on 2 years, 8 mil. So, I mean, like, that is less than half of what Joe Mixon is set to make. So, yeah, it was time to move on from Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon did really good for us for a long time, pulled us out of the Hill and Bernard era as well, but it was time to move on. Not time to move on from Ted Karras. In the month and a half, 2 months that I've been gone, Ted Karras signed a 1-year extension, and I like this an awful lot. Ted Karras is steady. Now, listen, the Bengals haven't generally been the, okay, what we'll do is extend people in their 30s type of thing. But listen, we're talking offensive line here. We saw Andrew Whitworth do his damn thing. It's all right to have an offensive lineman, a center, age 31, signed through his age 32 year. Sturdy, steady, doesn't get hurt, is named a captain, can move along the line if needed, but well, he's worked as a guard in the past as well. However, he really emerged as a great steady center. I believe his cap hit is 6.3 in that second year as opposed to the 7.1 this year, which is very, very good. Pardon me. Because Alex Kappa goes up $1 million next year. So, I think James Rapine of Locked on Bengals said that he wanted 2 years, but I don't have insight on that. He would know a lot better than me. So that $800,000 decrease, if I'm reading this correctly, helps cover the $1 million increase for Kappa. And then actually Orlando Browns goes down like a little bit. And they've spent some money on the line too with Trenton Brown, to sort of do that. Okay, we're going to transition from you to Amarius Mims as well. Now listen, Lee is somebody that I look at as a steal of a pick in the 7th round. And honestly, a guy in Matt Lee that I could see after that season could probably take over for Karras as things stand, based on the upside that people are talking about regarding him. Guys, get in your chats. I would love to know what you guys think. Love to know what you guys hear. Let's talk about Hard Knocks. Man, what a great decision. In-season Hard Knocks. So it will start in December, and the Bengals will be covered, as will the Ravens and the Steelers and the Browns. So Tim says, do you think the AFC North will be as hard as the division as it was last season? Think it'll be harder, Tim. Think it'll be harder. I'll tell you why. The Ravens are here to stay, period. The Ravens are here to stay. They got rid of OBJ. Cool. He wasn't doing shit anyway. They've got a better vertical attack. The Browns, a little bit more sturdy this year. Deshaun Watson, I'm still convinced he ain't actually good, but you got him for a full season. That's interesting. They picked the best division to do this about. Every team was over 500 last year, and I look at the Steelers and I go, damn it, they found a way too. They found a way. They looked and they moneyballed that shit with Russell Wilson, brother. That's what they did. Because listen, is Russell Wilson worth the amount of money he was making? No. But you mean to tell me that you don't want, if you have Kenny Pickett, you got Kenny Pick 6 on your team, you wouldn't prefer to have a guy who completed 66% of his passes through 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year? Yeah, I would much prefer that. And then waiting in the wings, a Justin Fields, where if your top guy goes down, you can plug him in, and he started some games and had some high upside, but they were ready to move on because they got the number 1 pick. He's a guy that started 38 games in the NFL. 60% completion percentage, not exactly, starter material as it looks, but had his best year last year, I thought. I think the Steelers find another damn way to win their 9 games. A bad season for anybody else is like winning 3, 4, 5 games. A bad season for the Steelers is finishing 500 or over. And I don't have to like them, but I respect those moves that they made at quarterback. I saw that, and listen, if it happened to any other team in any other division, I'd be like, whatever, take it. It was a serious upgrade for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, a serious upgrade for them. Like, they could have brought in like Zach Wilson or somebody and said, you know what? We're going to try this. We're going to do what the Broncos did. We're going to let Russell Wilson go, and we're going to bring in Zach Wilson. All right. Because right now, the Broncos got Bo Nix, Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham. It is a giant question mark there. Yeah, Derrick Henry with Lamar on the Ravens. That's going to be – I don't like that. I don't like that at all as a Bengals fan. This is a stacked division. This is like the 2007 UFC light heavyweight division is what this is. It is insane. Look at what the Ravens have and their perpetual success. Look at the Steelers and their inability to actually suck, at least compared to the standards of everybody else in the division. Look at the Bengals, what they got, and then look at the Browns, who just managed to be annoying all the time. I just managed to annoy people. No, sir, I don't like it. I don't like it, but listen, over Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph, yeah, I'll take that. No, hey, Mason Rudolph didn't play that bad last year, I didn't think. He did his thing. And now he can go compete for the Titans. The quarterback carousel is always very interesting to me because I think that Geno Smith hopefully showed a whole lot of people, quite literally, don't write anybody off. Guy had 2 years to really try, hung around for 6 years, got his shot, and is a decent NFL quarterback. And sometimes all you need to do is be a decent NFL quarterback. Man, I miss football. Miss it so much. Guys, am I a Zach Taylor guy? He's all right. He's definitely a player's coach. But you know what, man? I'm glad that he sort of turned over the play calling. He needed to do that. Now, if I see a bunch of bubble screens this season, I'm going to be very frustrated. Throw that ball to the tight end. Guys, we'll be back soon. I'm going to do a What If Joe Burrow Only Played When He Was Healthy podcast, and I'm going to do a Predicting the Season Record podcast in the coming weeks. Love you guys. Miss you guys. Miss football. Till next time, we're out.